start with my usual chant. Om Tadekam Smaramas-tadekam Bhajamaha Tadekam Jagat Sakshi Rupam Namamaha Sadekam Nidhanam Niralambamisham Bhavam Bodhiputam Sharanyam Rajamaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. On that alone do we meditate, that alone do we worship, to that alone, the witness of the universe, do we bow. To that one who is our sole eternal support, the self-existent Lord, the raft to safety across the ocean of this world, do we come for refuge. Om, peace, peace, peace. So, Happy New Year to all of you whom I didn't already wish a Happy New Year. And if I did wish you, Happy New Year again. And we have the new year according to Gregorian calendar. Of course, it also comes right after the solstice. So that it is one appropriate time to call a new year. It means the days start getting longer again. We're welcoming the return of the light. We're welcoming the return of the light. And so it's a movement from darkness to light. The solstice is always a kind of the longest night of the year in the northern hemisphere. So it's a time of contemplation and diving within. And then we had, of course, Holy Mother's birthday, who is the very embodiment of purity. And we have Christmas, and the mother of Jesus was also considered immaculately pure. And then Jesus himself gave this beautiful teaching, blessed are the pure in heart. So I thought we could take up this topic. And we celebrated, of course, on New Year's Day, the Kalpataru Day, when Sri Ramakrishna blessed his disciples with illumination. And usually we emphasize how his grace overflowed all bounds. And he opened the floodgates of his chest of spiritual power and let it fall on everyone, and everyone attained illumination. But we came to know from Akshay Kumar Sen's biography of Sri Ramakrishna, the Sri Ramakrishna Puthi, which has been translated, I'm sorry to say, not very well, but still it's readable as, what's the title of the translation? I forgot. A Portrait of Sri Ramakrishna. And there we find that of all the devotees who approached Sri Ramakrishna, he touched all of them, and all of them had illumination, except one Mahayogananda. And Sri Ramakrishna touched his heart and then said, not today. Let it be for some time. So why? Why did Haramohan not receive that illumination? Sri Ramakrishna apparently felt he wasn't ready. He wasn't yet ready to bear that experience. Perhaps his heart wasn't pure enough. So it seems like, keeping that in mind, this project of keeping our hearts pure, of purifying our hearts, is a very desirable one, a very noble one that we also want to think about. How do we purify our hearts? What does it mean to have a pure heart? So I propose that we'll look today at what some of the great teachers have said about purity of heart and think something about this purity of heart. How do we cultivate that purity of heart? And let's start with the teachings of Jesus. Jesus was, with his disciples, he took his disciples up onto a mountain, away from the crowds, and gave them his personal spiritual instructions for their spiritual life. And this is the very famous passage in the Bible called the Sermon on the Mount, where he's talking to his intimate disciples, mainly, and he's giving them, he's outlining for them a path of moral perfection leading to spiritual illumination. So he gives them all kinds of instructions for how to live. And in the course of those instructions, he tells them, be you perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. So he's calling on his disciples and all of us to be perfect, which is right in line with our Vedantic teaching, because we know that actually our true nature is perfect. So at the beginning of this Sermon on the Mount, he gives 8 Beatitudes, they are called. Blessed, and of course there are 8 of them. We can remind ourselves, what are they? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So these are typically considered the 8 Beatitudes. What does beatitude mean? It means a supreme blessedness. A kind of blessedness of spiritual blessing, of a divine blessedness. And this one I want to focus on, this is 6th one. Blessed are the poor in spirit, in pure in heart, for they shall see God. Just as in our Sanskrit texts, we go back to the original Sanskrit to understand a little more of the meaning of the verse. I thought it would be nice to check the original Greek. This part of the Bible was originally written down in Greek, though Jesus himself spoke Aramaic. So I don't know Greek, but with the help of Google nowadays, you can look these things up. Makarioi, hoi kataroi te kardia, hoti autoi tomtion opsontai. All right, the first word, makarioi, blessed, happy, fortunate. I think it has a similar meaning to the word mangalam in Sanskrit, an auspicious blessing. We are blessed more than just happiness. It is actually a profound state of divinely conferred well-being. An inner felicity, I'm quoting here, an inner felicity and wholeness that is independent of external circumstances. And who is Makarioi, who has this blessedness? The pure ones, kataroi. And kataroi, the word is used to describe the different kinds of purity that we use the word purity for also. The free from adulteration, like ritually clean objects, like we say, oh, these copper vessels, they're pure, because we use them only for puja and we polish them and they're pure. So it refers to those kind of things. Also just clean things, like a pure water, or refined gold without any dross in it. Or morally and ethically clean persons, people who are innocent, they haven't done wicked deeds. And it has taken on the meaning of inner purity, that inner purity of our hearts, of our minds, free from passions and false notions. And then, where is that purity? De cardia. Our doctors will recognize the word cardia. Cardio, cardiologist, heart. That's the physical heart, but it also refers, even in the Greek, to that inner core of who we are. That central shining light around which we have built our personality, our heart. So in Vedanta we would say that the heart, the true nature of the heart is pure, but we have some coverings perhaps that cover that heart and obscure that shining light which is shining so brightly within us. And then the teaching continues. Hote autoi ton theon opsontai. Theon, remember theology, there's the word for God. Theon opsontai. Opsontai is the future tense of the verb to see. They will see God. Blessed are the pure in heart. So the English is a very literal translation. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. It's a definite promise that the pure in heart will have direct perception, not necessarily with our physical eyes, but a direct apprehension of the divine reality that underlies everything. So Swami Vivekananda loved this teaching of Jesus. He went so far as to say, if all the scriptures of the world were lost, except this one teaching, this one line, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, then humanity will be saved. This is enough. This one teaching is enough. He says, in that one sentence is the gist of all religions. If you have learnt that, all that has been said in the past, and all that it is possible to say in the future, you have known. You need not look into anything else, for you have all that is necessary in that one sentence. It could save the world were all the other scriptures lost. So there you have it. Swami Vivekananda felt that this phrase, this teaching of Jesus, actually embodies the gist of all religious teaching. He goes on to say, a vision of God, a glimpse of the beyond, never comes until the soul is pure. So, a beautiful idea that as our heart becomes pure, we are able to directly perceive the divine. This is our goal in Vedanta, to see God, to know God. And with a pure heart, with the purity, we shall see. That's the guarantee. What does it mean, this purity? Let's look at another story. A story of, this wasn't a story. Let's look at a story of Sri Ramakrishna's. This is a story about a young man named Padmalochan. His nice name. He had the lotus eyes. But he's a village boy, and he's a little bit of a simpleton. And the villagers used to just call him Bodo, Bodo. And that almost suggests something of his simple nature. That, oh, Bodo, Bodo, you've lost the beauty of the name Padmalochan. But of course, Padma meaning lotus, and Lochana meaning eyes. So he's got lotus eyes. So in this temple, in this village that Padmalochan lived in, and other villagers obviously, there was a dilapidated old temple. And probably many of you, if you've been to Indian villages, every Indian village somewhere will have a dilapidated old temple. And oftentimes it might be abandoned even. It's so old, and trees have started growing on the roof. Maybe just a little seed of a banyan tree or an ashwatha tree falls on the roof, and it sprouts. And gradually the roots take over and they start breaking apart the building. But they're still holding it together because the roots hold the building together while at the same time breaking it. So you have this kind of, this was that kind of temple. There's a small structure, and inside there were bats. So the floor was covered with bat droppings. It was filthy, and no one went there. It was the deity had long been removed from the temple. So one evening, just after sunset, the villagers all heard the sound of the conch. We didn't play the conch on New Year's Day. Usually it's considered a very auspicious sound, and we like to begin our worship with that, or begin the oddity with that sound, just that blowing of the conch. As you probably know, the conch has a long passage inside which the animal that builds it makes to live in. And if you cut off the very tip of the conch, then it's actually like a long tube, like a trumpet or something. And so you put it to your lips and you vibrate your lips like playing a trumpet or trombone or any brass instrument, and it produces this beautiful sound. So one evening, the sun has just set, The village, of course, there's no electric light, so when the sun sets, it's time to wrap things up and go home. And the villagers hear this sound of a conch coming from the direction of that old dilapidated temple. And they think, what's this? Maybe someone has restored the temple. Maybe someone has cleaned the temple and has brought the deity in and they're worshipping. So they all go running. As Sri Ramakrishna puts it, men and women, young and old, they all come running to the temple to see what's happened. And the door is closed, so one of the villagers, he gingerly creeps up and he opens the door to see what he thinks he's going to see the deity standing there. And what does he find? Nothing. Same old dirty temple. Only Bodo standing in the corner blowing the conch. And he gets annoyed, of course. He says, "You have set up no image here within the shrine, O fool. Blowing the conch, you simply make confusion worse confounded. Day and night, 11 bats scream there incessantly." I'm not sure if it's a poem or it's just a kind of a song or just a kind of a poem. Mandire tor nahik madhav, bodo shank fuke tui korligol. So that means in the temple, there's no Madhava. You haven't installed any deity, you haven't brought any deity into the temple. Oh, Bodo, you fool. Just blowing the conch, you're making, I love that line, confusion worse confounded. So then Sri Ramakrishna gives his own commentary on the story. He says, "There is no use in merely making a noise if you want to establish the deity in the shrine of your heart. If you want to realize God, first of all, purify the mind. In the pure heart, God takes his seat. One cannot bring the holy image into the temple if the droppings of bats are all around. The 11 bats are our 11 organs. 5 of action, 5 of perception, and the mind." This is very interesting. The shrine of our heart has bat droppings in it. And what are the bats? Our organs of sense and action. Whatever we smell, taste, see, hear, touch, and whatever we do with our hands and our feet and our organ of speech, the organs of evacuation and procreation, all these are the organs and the mind. And they leave, apparently, droppings. And imagine if we listen to malicious gossip, that's going to leave some droppings, some bad droppings in the heart. If we speak some lies, that's going to leave some bad droppings in the heart. So naturally, when we bring, say, on day before yesterday, we built a shrine. We had 2 hours to build a shrine in the hall of it's a classroom or something. So what did we do first? First we cleaned the place. And we cleaned it nicely, and then we brought tables and we put a clean tablecloth over the table. Then we felt like, okay, now we can bring the picture of Sri Ramakrishna in. We didn't want to bring it in when it's all dirty still and all that. We want to clean it. So likewise, in a temple, like village temple like this, you can't bring a holy image when it's all dirty. You want to purify everything. First wash it thoroughly, then sprinkle Ganges water over everything, then we'll bring in the image. When we do puja, as those of you who were present on Thursday remember, I guided us through a visualization where we envision, actually I didn't mention that part, there's a very vivid visualization that we do. We visualize the man of sin as sitting in the left side of our belly. And he embodies all the wicked actions that we ever did or ever could even think of doing. And it gets very graphic, in fact. And I asked one pujari, I asked a nun, if women imagine a woman of sin. They said, no. For men and women both, you imagine it's a man of sin, Papa Purusha. And his head is murder, killing someone. His arms represent stealing. His heart represents taking intoxicants. His loins represent adultery. like that, each part of his body represents really unhelpful actions that some of us may have done or may be attempted to do. And so we visualize that guy sitting there, and then we dry him up, chanting the mantra Yang. And we do a pranayama, inhaling Yang, and Yang is the bija for air, and that dries, we feel that he's getting completely dried up. And then we chant the mantra Rang, and feel that's the bija mantra, the seed mantra for fire. And we feel that he's getting completely burned up. And then we blow out all the ashes. And then we chant the mantra Vang, and feel that nectar is falling and completely purifying our body. Then, after that, we invoke the presence of Sri Ramakrishna in the heart. So that gives a little hint, what does it mean to purify the heart? All these tendencies that we have, these selfish tendencies for pleasure at the expense of others, for amassing money more than we need, for taking advantage of others for our own purposes. These are the kind of things that we want to clean out of the heart before we can install the deity in the heart. And so Sri Ramakrishna goes on to explain, first of all, invoke the deity, and then give lectures to your heart's content. First of all, dive deep, plunge to the bottom, and gather up the gems. Then you may do other things. He was talking to, among others, some Brahmo followers, the Brahmo Samaj, and he always felt that though he very much appreciated Keshav and some of the Brahmo leaders as being very sincere, but he felt that on the whole, they were a little shallow, and they hadn't really dived deep and attained genuine spiritual realization. But they were always giving lectures. And he's suggesting blowing the conch is like is making a big noise, shouting, but there's no deity in the temple. Like that, you can give a big lecture, but if the deity is not installed in the heart, then you won't get nothing will happen. It will just be confusion, worse confounded. And then, so Sri Ramakrishna, he's always encouraging us to dive deep. And then he laments, as he so often would. He laments, but nobody wants to plunge. People are without spiritual discipline and prayer, without renunciation and dispassion. They learn a few words and immediately start to deliver lectures. Nobody wants to plunge. Everybody's happy just hearing a few words about God and going to teach others. Like M, the first time he came to see Sri Ramakrishna, and he started telling Sri Ramakrishna, but sir, those who worship clay images should be told that they should be worshipping God and not the image. And then Sri Ramakrishna gives him a good scolding. He says, you people from Calcutta, you all like to give lectures. You haven't known God, and yet you want to teach everyone else how to know God. So that's his lament. But I would like to say that all of us here today have that interest, or we wouldn't be here. Why would we give up a Saturday when it's a kind of gray day and we might like to just hang out at home? But instead we come to the Vedanta Center to hear some Swami talk about purity of heart. Why? Because we have some longing for God. We have some longing to know the divine. We want to go deep. We want to dive deep. So for some of us that desire may be very strong. For others, maybe not so strong. But pay attention to that interest. Pay attention to that longing. That is a precious flame of longing. As that flame grows, if we protect it from the wind, from the worldly wind, and give it, gently blow on that flame with the breath of devotion and prayer and japa, gradually that flame begins to grow and start to become a fire. And when it turns into a fire, it will burn away all the dross. It will burn away all the impurities in our heart. It's that fire of longing. It is often said that All our spiritual practice, our japa, tapa, prayers, all the intense disciplines, all those are for the purpose of purity of heart, purity of mind. When the mind becomes pure, when the heart becomes pure, the divine is directly perceived. There, in that perfectly clean mirror of the heart. So Vivekananda says purity is absolutely the basic work, the bedrock upon which the whole bhakti building rests. If there's a building, we're trying to build a building of bhakti, or of any other spiritual discipline, of jnana as well. The edifice of our spiritual life rests on the foundation of purity of heart, purity of mind. Now, what about the Vedantic perspective? From the Vedantic perspective, our true nature is purity. We are pure by our very nature. Our nature is pure consciousness and infinite bliss. Let's remember the amazing words of Swami Vivekananda, uttered at the Parliament of Religions in 1893. It was not September 11, but September 19, when he gave his discourse on Hinduism. And he tells the assembled people there, and all of us, children of immortal bliss. What a sweet, what a hopeful name. Allow me to call you, brethren, by that sweet name, heirs of immortal bliss. Yea, the Hindu refuses to call you sinners. Ye are the children of God, the sharers of immortal bliss, holy and perfect beings, ye divinities on earth. Sinners? It is a sin to call a man so. It is a standing libel on human nature. Come up, O lions, and shake off the delusion that you are sheep. You are souls immortal, spirits free, blessed, and eternal. So this is the teaching of Vedanta, that we are pure, we are children of immortal bliss. And so then, if that's the case, what is all this purifying business? We are pure by our nature. A little later in the talk, Swami Vivekananda says this. He says the Vedas teach, he's talking about the Vedas, especially the Upanishads, they teach that the soul is divine, only held in the bondage of matter. Perfection will be reached when this bond will burst. And the word they use for it is therefore mukti, freedom. Freedom from the bonds of imperfection, freedom from death and misery. All right, so that pure divine soul that we are is enmeshed somehow, held in the bondage of matter, and that bondage will break, and we become again free. And therefore, the term used is mukti, freedom. Freedom from death and misery and imperfection. And then Swami Vivekananda says, this is very interesting, this bondage can only fall off through the mercy of God. We need divine grace. There may be a rare soul who can do it on her own, on his own. But we all crave divine grace. This bondage can only fall off through the mercy of God, and this mercy comes on the pure. So, purity is the condition of his mercy. Okay, so now it seems like we have a little bit of a paradox, and I'm not sure there's any explanation for it. On the one hand, we are pure, and yet we are caught in matter, and we need divine grace to get out of it, to get free, and that grace comes when we are pure. when our this mind, which is part of this world, our limited mind, with which we identify ourselves, as that becomes pure, the grace comes and shows us that, oh, that who you thought you were is not really you. You are actually divine, infinite, eternal. How does that mercy act, asks Vivekananda? He reveals himself to the pure heart. The pure and the stainless see God even in this life. So we don't know that innate purity. It is hidden but to us by ignorance, by all the selfishness and greed and lust and anger. So the work of purifying ourselves actually is removing the dross, removing the dust, removing the obstacles to manifesting our innate purity. And then by divine grace, we attain our freedom. Sri Ramakrishna used to equate the pure mind itself with the divine. He would say the pure, one sadhaka asked him, and he would say this often, but in one conversation, the sadhaka from Konagar, that somewhat infamous visitor to Dakshineshwar, who was a kind of a skeptic of Sri Ramakrishna, but he asks him, is it possible to see God? And Sri Ramakrishna tells him, God is unknowable by the mind, engrossed in worldliness. One cannot attain God if one has even a trace of attachment to lust and gold. But he is knowable by the pure mind and the pure intelligence. The mind and intelligence that have not the slightest trace of attachment. Pure mind, then he comes to this, pure mind, pure intelligence, pure Atman are one and the same thing. This appears a number of times he gives this teaching. Shuddha Manas, or in Bengali Shuddha Mon, Shuddha Manas, the pure mind, Shuddha Buddhi, Shuddha Atma are one, are the same thing. How interesting. As the mind becomes pure, the intellect becomes pure. The self, which is our true self, shines clear. It reflects clearly off the completely polished mirror of our hearts. That's one way that I understand this teaching. And he says, as soon as the mind becomes free from attachment, the divine is realized. So this impurity, sometimes he might say, it's simply attachment. We get inordinately attached to various things. And as that gets released, the mind becomes pure. And then he says, whatever appears in the pure mind is the voice of God. How amazing. Do you want to hear the voice of God? We all pray. I think we all pray. Most of us pray. Most people pray. How many of us hear God's reply? Not too many, maybe. So, and usually if someone says, oh, God told me this, God told me that, then, oh yeah, really? Be careful of that guy. But Sri Ramakrishna says, if whatever appears in the pure mind, the perfectly pure mind, is the voice of God. How beautiful. So how does it look in practice? Let's try to get a little more practical. What do we mean by this pure heart? If something is pure, it's not mixed with other things, right? A pure water, it's not diluted with anything. Pure gold, it doesn't have any other elements, any other metals melted into it. All the other metals have been removed through the refining process. That refining process is actually a nice way of imagining it. I'm not sure how gold is refined. They have to melt it and they add certain things to bring out the impurities, and they skim them off the top or something, and gradually it becomes pure gold, which is very soft and malleable. And how about our hearts? Is there a singleness of purpose in our hearts? Or perhaps there are mixed motives, good motives and some not so good motives. Do our thoughts and words tally? Sri Ramakrishna often used to emphasize this truthfulness, that the mind and the lips should be one. But so often we have one thing in our heart and we say something else. He would call that a theft in the chamber of the heart. If we can imagine a treasure we are keeping here, and when the words and the heart don't match, then that's like stealing from that treasure. So I think it's very helpful to study the lives of saints to understand what purity of heart actually looks like. We find in the great saints a simplicity, a beautiful simplicity in their life. We find unselfishness. Real saints are unselfish, always concerned about the well-being of others. They don't want anything for themselves. Look at Holy Mother. People would bring her all kinds of good things to eat. But her joy was in feeding others with those good things. How much of those things she actually tasted of herself? Very, very little. Sometimes maybe not at all. She was only to feed her children, give that to others. For herself, any old thing was enough. Only acting for the good of others. And we find this unconditional love manifesting in the great spiritual people. That they love everyone, even the people who are hard to love. I often think of Swami Swahanandaji in this regard. There were people who found refuge with him that none of us could stand. And he would even invite them sometimes to stay with us in the guest house of our monastery. And sometimes they would stay for quite a while, and then finally someone would go to Swami Swahanandaji and say, Maharaj, please, we can't bear it anymore, please, please, please. And then he would relent and he'd tell them gently that he was sorry, now it's time for you to go. But he could bear them in a way that nobody else could bear them. That unconditional love, just loving, feeling like their stay here will benefit them, even though it was very difficult for the rest of us. Mastering the tendencies of lust and greed and anger. Quality of forgiveness is prominent in those who are. It's very hard to insult a saint. Very easy to insult. Most of us find it very easy to feel insulted. But the great saints won't be insulted. You can say all kinds of nasty things to them. Look at Sri Ramakrishna Girish would curse him in the most filthy language. Sri Ramakrishna would just be quiet. He knew that Girish will come around. But he needs to be loved. He needs to feel like he is truly loved. Then that venom will subside, will go away. So this quality that I love, this simplicity. There's the Bengali and Sanskrit word for it is saralata or charolata. This saral, this simplicity, straightforwardness, guilelessness. Again and again, Sri Ramakrishna emphasizes this, and I think this is almost, perhaps this is equivalent to the idea of purity, is this saralata, this simplicity of heart. There's no twists and turns inside. What you see is what you get. Sometimes we think, oh, the simple person is somehow stupid, or it doesn't mean stupid. And it doesn't mean a fool. Sri Ramakrishna scolded Swami Yogananda when the young boy, before he became the Swami, of course, he went to buy a pot. And he simply purchased it from a shopkeeper who seemed to be devoted to God, and he just purchased it without checking if it had any cracks or defects in it. And then it was found to have a crack. It was leaking. Now, in America, in 2025, if that happens, you just take it back to the shop and exchange it. Or rather, you go on to Amazon and you say, defective, return, and then you ship it back to Amazon and get a new one. But in India, that wasn't the system. Well, once you've bought it, you've bought it. So people would check thoroughly before giving the money, check it thoroughly, make sure it's good. In fact, I purchased some puja implements this last time in India. Including some little water pots. What did we do before I purchased them? Filled them with water. Make sure they don't leak. Yes, you have to do that. So that means Sri Ramakrishna scolded, I ask you to be a devotee, not to be a fool. So the root verb from which this word comes is sri, to flow. So it suggests an unimpeded flow of the mind flowing in one direction like a river, a stream that flows straight to the ocean, that doesn't take, most rivers when they get near the ocean, they get all kinds of twists and turns in them. But a stream that flows straight without any turns, that is that idea of simplicity. A one-pointedness. Sri Ramakrishna used to use the example of a thread, no? When you're trying to thread a needle, if just one little fiber is sticking out, one little twist in the mind, one little attachment, that thread won't go through the eye of the needle. You have to put a little oil on the thread, or of course nowadays we just lick it, right? Most people probably lick it. I certainly learned to do it that way. And twist it, the oil of, but let's use oil so it's not. So the oil of devotion, put a little oil of devotion on that thread of the mind and tie all the threads into one pointed love for God. And then the thread goes right through the eye of the needle without any difficulty. So in the Hindu tradition, there's quite a bit of emphasis placed on external purity. We find this also in several other, not so much in Christianity, we don't see it there, but we see it in Judaism, the Orthodox Judaism, and in Islam as well. Not so much in Buddhism also, but these three ancient traditions. Islam also has strict rules on ablutions, how you must do your ablutions. Before you can make namaz, before you can do your prayers, you have to do certain ablutions, and you have to do them in a certain way. First you rinse your mouth, then you rinse your nose, then you do your eyes, then you do your ears, and then you do your hands, then you do your feet. But if you have done certain things, then you actually have to have a complete bath before you're permitted to do your prayers. So they also emphasize this external purity. And this can help. It can help us to cultivate in purity of mind by keeping the body clean. Orthodox Hindus will bathe 3 times a day. We just were reading about Swami Turiyananda yesterday, who used to bathe 3 times a day. And here in our temple, we also try to observe certain rules. When we do puja, we want to first have a bath before we do the puja, preferably wearing washed clothing, and we don't mix the things. No, we don't use the plates that we eat off of on the altar. We use a separate plate that's reserved for that. So we have certain rules about purity, and all these can be helpful for cultivating the internal purity. On the other hand, it is also seen that many people become fanatical about these things, and they become completely obsessed about the external purity, forgetting that actually the point is to develop the internal purity. And at least in probably all parts of India have it, but in Bengal they have a special word for that. It's called Shuchi Bai, and all the Bengalis know that. And all of you probably had a grandmother or aunt or someone who was like that, who was so concerned about the external, forgetting the whole point of it. So that is a difficulty. That's a problem. So it has to be. We have to have a balance. Swami Vivekananda says, when there's real purification of the body, external and internal, there arises neglect of the body, and the idea of keeping it nice vanishes. Very interesting. If we properly observe the external purity and the internal purity, rather than becoming more concerned with our bodies, we become less concerned about them, less concerned about how they look to others. He says, this thirst after body is the great bane of human life. So the first sign of the establishment of purity is that you do not care to think you are a body. It is only when purity comes that we get rid of the body idea. There's a certain science of vibration also, this sattva guna. We have these 3 gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva. As we cultivate purity, cleanliness, and fresh flowers, all these things give an idea of, these all enhance sattva guna. The vibrations of sattva become strengthened. That's part of the idea of purity. Now, interestingly, I mentioned how in the puja we burn up all our impurities and all of that, and a good portion of the first part of the puja is dedicated to purification, rituals of purification. But at the very beginning of the puja, just after we sip a little water and feel that we are getting pure, we chant this mantra: Om apavitra pavitro va sarvavasthangato viva yah smaret pundarikaksham sa bahyabhyantara shuchihi. Apavitra, impure, unholy, pavitrova, or pure and holy. Sarvavasthan, in whatever condition we may find ourselves. Yasmare, one who remembers Pundarikaksha, again, the one with the lotus eyes, the one who remembers God, the one who thinks of the divine, that person, Bahya, Abhyantara, both externally and internally, Shuchihi, becomes pure. So that is a wonderful teaching. Think of God, that actually the divine is the purest of the pure, is the pure reality. That is enough. If we can do it, all these other things are helping us to do it. To think of God, that is, we become pure within and without. So there's all kinds of ideas about food. If you eat the wrong food, you become impure. And the different religions have different foods which have to be avoided. In Islam, it's pork. In Judaism, also pork. In Hinduism, beef. Pork is also not really encouraged, but it's beef that is the worst thing. But pork, chicken, all meat for some people is to be eschewed. Eggs, garlic, onion, all these things are to be avoided. And again here, yes, if that helps you, great. But it also can become fanatical. And Sri Ramakrishna gives a stern warning about this. He says, I think you know this teaching, blessed is one who longs for God, who keeps the mind in God, even if that person eats pork. But shame on that fool who, though eating the purest food, havishyana, just the boiled vegetables, rice and ghee, the very purest food, thinks about sex and money. So it's not ultimately about food, it's about where is the mind. There's also the idea that food is anything we ingest, not only through our mouth, but through our eyes and our ears, all our senses. So if we listen, as I mentioned, listening to malicious gossip, that also can be considered food for the mind. So it may be actually more important to purify that food. There's an incident in Jesus' life, fascinating incident. Some Pharisees and scribes come to him. The Pharisees were those who were strong followers of external rituals, of all the rituals and rules of religion. So probably they would be considered have that shuchi bai problem. And so they came to Jesus complaining about his disciples, that, hey, why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat. Probably there was some ritual way of washing the hands, that you have to chant some prayers and wash your hands in a certain way, and then only you can eat. And Jesus gave the reply. But he wasn't speaking to them, he was speaking to everybody. And he said, listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them. But what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them. And the disciples asked him, can you explain further? Jesus sometimes would get a little impatient with his disciples when they wouldn't catch the meaning. This for him was enough, but they didn't catch it. What? Still don't you understand? All right. Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? It goes out. But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person. But eating with unwashed hands does not defile them. It's wonderful how he turns the question completely on its head. It's not what we put into our mouth, it's what comes out of our mouth that really matters, that makes us pure or impure. That's a wonderful thing to think about, that what comes out of our mouths is what makes us pure, or conversely impure. Very practical. Whatever goes in the mouth, it also leaves the body from the other end. So Let's look at Holy Mother briefly. So Holy Mother used to cook for Sri Ramakrishna every day when she was at Dakshineshwar. Sri Ramakrishna had a very delicate stomach. He couldn't bear the spicy, oily food that came from the Kali temple, from the main kitchen. So she would cook for him. But for 3 days a month during her monthly period, she wouldn't cook because she was considered impure. She thought that she's impure at that time. She can't cook for Sri Ramakrishna. So for those 3 days, Sri Ramakrishna suffered. So he asked her, why for 3 days don't you cook for me? And then she explained to him, well, see, I'm on my period, I can't cook for you. Who told you that? Who told you that? You will cook for me. There is nothing wrong in it, he told her. Please tell me what is impure in your body, the skin, or flesh, or bones, or marrow? It is the mind that makes one pure or impure. There is nothing called impurity outside the mind. After that, Holy Mother cooked for Sri Ramakrishna every day. So that is perhaps the fruit of her prayer. You know, she used to sit at night, on moonlit nights, she would see the moon, and she would weep, praying to God. There are stains even on the moon, but let my mind be absolutely stainless. So it became like that, absolutely stainless. There's a somewhat amusing incident regarding Nalini, Holy Mother's niece. This happened in Calcutta at the Mother's house there, sometimes called the Udbodhan office. At that time it was also the Udbodhan office. Now they're separated. So I learned the hard way when I first visited India. If you ask for the Udbodhan office now, you'll get sent to where they have big publishing and printing and all the books. And if you want to go where the Holy Mother stayed, you have to ask for Mother's house. And in all the books we say Udbodhan house, Udbodhan house, Udbodhan house, because they were both together. But now they're separated, and so that tradition is now Mother's house and Udbodhan are two separate things, right? Across the street from each other. So Nalini, it was evening, she entered the room after she had gone to the Ganges to take a bath. Even though she's not keeping very well, but she'd gone and taken a bath in the Ganges. What happened? Oh, the toilet was dirty. Of course, in those days it was just a room with a pit in the floor, or one of those floor latrines. Mm-hmm. So the toilet had been a little dirty, so she had poured some mugs of water to clean it a little. Then she had felt that she needed to go take a bath in the Ganges. And the disciple says, you could have just taken a bath under the tap, that would have been enough. And Holy Mother agreed, yes, just bathe under the tap and then sprinkle a little Ganges water, that's enough. And Nalini is shocked. What? How could that be enough? It was a latrine. How could that be enough? Then Mother points out very practically, you just poured water, you didn't even touch any excrement. Very frankly, you didn't even touch any excrement, you just and actually, even if you had touched excrement, what is excrement actually but just food? Food that's been in the stomach and then it comes out. What is just food? Say you put some food, say you make some rice and dal and vegetables and put them in a bowl and leave it out for 3 days, it'll be stinking. It's just basically just like that. So it's actually very practical, no? She got right down into the practicality of it. And then she admits that in the village, she says, in the village, I too had stepped on dried excrement on several occasions. People in those days would just go here and there sometimes. So she has, sometimes you step on it. It's gross, we think gross. So what happens? Holy Mother steps on excrement. I only chanted Govinda, Govinda twice. That was enough. I felt perfectly pure. All is in the mind. It is in the mind alone that one feels pure and impure. So that was enough for her. Govinda, Govinda. The disciples used to say, if Mother sprinkles Ganges water on her, then we really get worried that she must have touched something really bad, because even for dried excrement, Govinda, Govinda is enough. She points out that one must first of all make one's own mind guilty. Then alone can one see another's guilt. This is in the same conversation. So now she's expanding the idea of purity from physical things like poop, to put it bluntly, to seeing others' faults. Does anything ever happen to another if you enumerate their faults? It only injures you. This has been my attitude from my childhood. Hence, I can't see anybody's faults. If someone does a trifle for me, I try to remember them even for that. To see the faults of others, one should never do it. I never do so. Forgiveness is tapasya. Forgiveness is the real spiritual practice. So that purity, in the course of this discussion on the pure mind, she extends it to this idea of finding faults. This is a real impurity in our hearts, to find faults with others, to enumerate their faults, because why? First, we have to have that fault in us, in some sense, in order to see it in others. So her mind was so pure, she couldn't see faults in others. Finally, we'll touch on one more teaching. One of her disciples, this is recorded in the Gospel of Holy Mother, he was skeptical about the need for initiation with a mantra, mantra diksha. He said, suppose you just chant the name of God, isn't that enough? And of course we know that the name of God is very potent, no doubt. But Holy Mother said, the mantra purifies the body. By repeating the Lord's mantra, a person becomes pavitra, pure and holy. So the mantra makes us pavitra. And then she tells this story. Narada, the great singing minstrel of the Lord, close friends with Narayana. He used to travel all over the universe, singing and chanting the name of God, and also making mischief. And so one day he pays a visit to Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha, and Mother Lakshmi is there, and Vishnu, and he sits there for a long time and has a long talk with the Lord, and then he leaves the place. And as soon as he leaves, Narayana tells Lakshmi, hey, Lakshmi, purify that place with cow dung. And Lakshmi is stunned. What? Lord, Narada is your great devotee. Why do you say this? And then he says, Narada has not yet had mantra diksha. Without taking a mantra, the body does not become pure. So then Holy Mother tells this disciple, at least for the purification of the body, the mantra is needed. But then she goes on to say, everything depends on the mind. Without purification of the mind, nothing can be attained. Well, that first line of Sri Chaitanya's Shikshashtakam, I think is relevant here, is 8 verses of instruction. The very first phrase is what? Cheto darpana marjanam. So chanting the name of God, what does it do? It polishes the mirror of the heart. I've talked about this idea of the heart as a mirror. It polishes the mirror of the heart. If there's dust on the heart, chanting the name of God, chanting the mantra, purifies it. It brings our mind, all our the tendencies of the mind, which are going in so many directions, it pushes them all into one direction. So gradually, say that our hair, those who have long hair and it gets all tangled if you haven't brushed it for a couple of days, then gradually you have to brush it out, right? So all the hairs are going in one direction. So maybe chanting the name of God is like that. All the different tangles of the hairs of our heart get made into one direction, so it all goes in one direction. And this Swami Vivekananda also praises the name. In fact, he praises very much the name of Sri Ramakrishna. He calls Sri Ramakrishna's name as perfectly pure and utterly auspicious. In the hymn we sing every night, Om Ringritam, he says, first of all, your name is absolutely pure. It is Shivam Suvimalam, auspicious and absolutely pure, and has the power to transform our wicked deeds into good deeds. Krityam karoti kalusham. Those mistakes we make in our lives which end up hurting ourselves or hurting others. These, how can we transform them? How can we purify them? Swami Vivekananda suggests that the name of Ramakrishna has that power, being utterly pure, because he is utterly pure. It even has the power to transform our wicked deeds, our mistakes, shall we say, our mistakes in life. So, I think that's enough for today. Let us, on this new year, as the new year begins, let us feel that also we can, let us strive to purify our heart. The new year always feels like a fresh start, doesn't it? So, okay, this is a new year. Let us purify our hearts and let the divine light shine in our hearts. Let our hearts become so pure that they shine, that not only we, but others can see that light. As Jesus said, one doesn't hide a candle under a bushel basket, but one places it on the lampstand, so that all can see it, all can see the light. So like that, he says, let your light so shine. So, as we purify our hearts, that light shines in such a way that it brings light not only to us, but to everyone. So that's my prayer for today, that we may attain that purity of heart, so that our light shines for all, and that we shall definitely see the divine shining within us and shining within all, and attain fulfillment of our life. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritangamaya Aviravirma Iti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you on purity of heart.
One question.
We have, I guess we can take a